Hey, everybody, what's going on? It's Steve Van Tassel here, coming at you for Dynasty Owner. And today we have another off-season video based on an article that I just wrote. Since today it's September 1st, as I'm recording this video, yesterday was roster cutdown day in the NFL. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how, with Dynasty Owner, how you can deal with the NFL roster turnover madness. And a lot of that is, teams had to cut down to 53 players yesterday, and they did, and a lot of players got cut. I think I saw a number that said like 850 players had to be released, waived, put on injured reserve, the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list, at some point in the last couple of days. And so what you need to do is you need to learn how to deal with that as a dynasty owner, as opposed to a regular fantasy football owner. It's a lot different for dynasty owners than it is for if you're in a regular dynasty league, or especially if you're in a redraft league. Redraft leagues are much different. So let's start talking about this. So we're going to talk about how to deal with dealing with the NFL roster turnover madness. So what's happened since Sunday? Well, a bunch of things. There's a bunch of players didn't make the 53-man roster. See, these are some of the more prominent ones. Cam Newton, quarterback formerly of the Patriots. We've got his, if you're watching it on YouTube, you see the video, the contract here. He had a 1-year, $5.1 million contract. Brashard Perryman, wide receiver formerly of the Lions, his 1-year, $2.5 million contract. Nick Folk, former Patriots kicker, 1-year, $1.625 million. And then a couple of running backs who were making under $1 million a year. Wayne Gallman, who was on San Francisco, $990,000, and Javian Hawkins, who was on Atlanta before he got released, and then moved to Tennessee and then got released. And even though his contract is only 1 year, $660,000, he's on this list because he was owned at one point in like almost 100% of dynasty owner leagues. He was a hot commodity. He was a hot commodity for a while, but now he's been released by 2 different teams. Other things happened. Players who didn't make the 53-man roster. We had players who were placed on the IR or the PUP list, and those guys included J.K. Dobbins, who got injured. He's on injured reserve. He's out for the entire 2021 season. Same thing with Travis Etienne, running back for Jacksonville, and Cam Akers, the Rams running back. And Michael Thomas, he had surgery back in June, and he's on the physically unable to perform list, which means he's going to be out at least the first 6 weeks of the 2021 season. So those are the type of things that have happened in the last couple of days. And so, the question is, what do we do with those recently released players? Well, if you're in a redraft league, it's pretty easy. You just cut them. But dynasty owner, you've got a couple of options here. And the first one is you can trade. You could find somebody who wants, say, Cam Newton, and take whatever you can get, and that's it. You get a third-round draft pick in 3 years, fine, I'll take it. You get a dynasty dollar, take it. Second thing you could do is you could drop him. That's easy. That's what you do in a redraft league. You just get rid of them. Maybe in a regular dynasty league, you get rid of them and pick up somebody else. But in dynasty owner, it's actually going to cost you money. It's going to cost you 25% of the remaining salary in dynasty dollars, which is real money. Take the Cam Newton example. He cost $5.1 million. His salary is $5.1 million. To drop him, you're going to have to pay 25% of that, which is $1.275 million. In terms of dynasty dollars, it's $1 for every $1 million. You do $10 million to start, but after that you have to buy it. So if you had to pay the money, you'd have to pay $1.27 to get rid of Cam Newton. Doesn't seem like a lot, but if you start talking about guys who have big salaries, all of a sudden you're talking real money. The third strategy is hold and keep. And basically what happens is a lot of times these guys get cut, and then another team will pick them up and sign them for their minimum salary. And so, like for Cam Newton example, he's making $5.1 million. If, say, the Houston Texans or the Dallas Cowboys decide to sign him and want him as their backup quarterback, he'll probably make the veteran minimum, which is a little over $1 million, $1,075,000. So basically, in Dynasty Owner, what will happen is you will be able, your salary cap, once that contract goes into effect, will reflect the new contract, and your salary will drop $4 million. You keep Newton and you lose $4 million in salary. Not a bad thing if you want to keep the player, if you think that player is worth holding on to. And the final strategy is hold and drop. And basically, is wait for the other NFL team to sign the player to a new contract, then drop him for free. Because what happens in Dynasty Owner is that when players get a new contract, the Dynasty Owner has 7 days to decide whether he wants to keep the player, trade the player, or drop the player. But the drop is free, and that's the important word, is free. As opposed to if you just drop him right away, it costs you 25% of the remaining salary. If you just hold and wait for a little while, sometimes you can drop that player for free. So I had a similar situation with Steven Sims, who was on the Washington football team and was waived, released, and then picked up by the Bills. I waited. I knew I didn't want Sims, so I decided to wait. I held on to him. I waited. And then when he was picked up and his new contract went into effect, I was able to release him for free. And I used that to purchase, to buy another player who I needed, a kicker who I needed. So, like I said, every situation is different, but that's sort of what you can do in Dynasty Owner when something like this happens. So now say you've got some players. Everybody's going to have a player or two who maybe got hurt or got released, a couple of players at the end of your roster. So what are you going to do? There's players you could start. Here's some players you could start drafting and picking up now. Drafting, if you haven't had your draft yet, these are guys to start thinking about who may be going really deep or have an NA next to them in terms of their ADP, but you should be drafting. And picking up now is for those of you who have already drafted your Dynasty Owner roster, but you've got 30 roster spots plus 3 injured reserve spots, and you only draft 25 players. So unless you just went out and grabbed a bunch of players right after your draft ended, you might have a roster space or two, as long as you have some salary cap room. So what are some of the players you could pick up? Well, this is an example that I'm talking about because I don't want you to wait too long to grab some guys. This is Tyson Williams ownership over time. And in case you're not familiar with Tyson Williams, he's probably the new backup running back to Gus Edwards in Baltimore. Until the injury to J.K. Dobbins the other day, probably people outside his immediate family, people who follow BYU football and super Ravens fans, probably had zero idea who Tyson Williams was. I mean, on Sunday, which was right after the injury to J.K. Dobbins, he was 6% owned in Dynasty Owner. Fast forward 2 days later, and suddenly he's 79% owned in Dynasty Owner. And as of earlier today, he was 84% owned in Dynasty Owner. And my guess is that number is going to go up tomorrow. So if you want Williams, if you need a running back, if you had Dobbins and you need a replacement, go out and get him. And so, what this shows is because Williams' salary is $660,000, you see how players go faster in Dynasty Owner than they do on other platforms. I mean, you look at the NFL, Tyson is at 22% ownership right now. And on Sleeper, he's on 66% ownership. I know there's a little different. Some of those leagues have redraft leagues, smaller rosters than Dynasty Owner, maybe some have bigger rosters. But the point is that I think the people who, when you're playing in Dynasty Owner, because of the salaries, people are going to start looking for lower cost options like Williams and seek them out, as opposed to a platform where salary doesn't matter and there's no salary cap, where you can just pick the best player possible regardless of how much he cost. So here's some players who I think you could go get right now, mostly available. When I started the article, they were all pretty much available, but now somewhat less so. Quinn, for the first two, are a pair of kickers who weren't very highly owned at the beginning of the week, and right now are each over 50% owned, and that's Quinn Nordin and Tristan Vizcaino. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, I'll be honest. He is replacing Michael Badgley as the Chargers kicker. Both of them are on sub $1 million a year contracts. Both of them are replacing guys who were getting paid over $1 million, but in training camps and things, nobody had much confidence in those guys. I mean, Norden was had a couple of good preseason games, but he was still only owned in a third of leagues before the decision was made to release Folk. And then by the next day, he went up 26% to his current roster percentage, which is 59.3%. Same with Vizcaino. He was 8% owned the other day. Now he's 51% owned. And both of them are just going to keep going up as people realize that they probably need another kicker. Maybe they don't have a lot of salary cap room. Look, these guys are under $1 million. Most of the other kickers who are available are kickers costing you $2-3 million a year, and these guys don't cost that. The third player on the list here is Tyler Conklin. He's the new starting tight end for the Minnesota Vikings. Yes, they did trade for Christopher Herndon, but I think Conklin's probably still going to be the starter at least at the beginning of the year. And his contract is only 1 year for $685,000. His ownership's been moving up. It's up to 37% now. Don't be surprised if it goes even higher with the news that happened late today, actually, sometime today, that Irv Smith is probably out for the whole season. So that means that people might be picking up Tyler Conklin. So you need to jump on that right away before his ownership gets higher and he's not as widely available in your league. Fourth on the list is Caden Smith. He's the Giants tight end. Again, another guy who is a backup tight end. He was the number 3 to start the season, but he might be the starter in the first game of the year. He's a little different. He's got 2 years left. His salary is $680,000 a year, but he's only owned in 30% of leagues. So, he might not be super desirable, but if you need a tight end, if you need somebody who might get you some points in the first week, it's time to go out and get Caden Smith before he has a good week 1 and people start drafting him. Next on the list is a guy I picked up in a couple of leagues, is Dare Ogunbowale. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I know I picked him up in a couple of Dynasty owner leagues. He's the Jacksonville running back who's probably going to be the third down back now that Travis Etienne is out. He's been the third down back before on another team in Florida, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, before they brought in Tom Brady in 2019 with Jameis Winston. He was the third down back, and he put up about 5-point Dynasty owner fantasy points per game, which isn't too bad, especially because he was mostly a pass-catching back, and he had no receiving touchdowns. So, I mean, he's probably not going to put up huge points for you, but last year when he was given the opportunity in the last 2 games of the year, when James Robinson from Jacksonville was out, he scored double-digit points both games. He had 11 and 11.2 points as sort of the featured back for Jacksonville. Not to say that he's going to do that at the beginning of the season, but somebody to pick up if you need a spot to replace like an ATN or Cam Akers. And finally, the last guy here on this list is LaJordan Humphrey. He's probably the biggest reach on this list. But honestly, somebody's got to catch passes for the Saints this year, especially for the first 6 games with Michael Thomas out. And while everybody's already jumped on Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith, and to a lesser extent, Deontay Harris, Humphrey is still available. And so he was the best receiver. He had touchdown passes in both of the team's 2 preseason games, so he might be worth a shot. So those are 6 players that you can go out and get pretty much probably right now in your Dynasty owner league. And finally, to finalize, we have 3 guys who I'm going to call 3 late round flyers. These are guys who are being taken in the 20th round or later, and for the most part, they're going on mostly undrafted. They're all owned in less than 50% of leagues. I expect their ownership to move up as we go along. The top player, somebody I've talked about before, Demarcus Robinson, from the wide receiver from Kansas City. He could be the 3rd wide receiver in Kansas City, even the 2nd possibly wide receiver. And if you think about it, somebody else in Kansas City's got to catch the ball. They had a ton of receivers in camp, and they cut most, if not almost all of them. But Robinson survived, and he's 1 year, a little over $1 million a year. And, in comparison to like McCole Hardman, who's going in you have to draft in like the top 10 round, one of the top first 10 rounds, you can get Demarcus Robinson. His ADP is 263.1. That's like a 20th round pick, 21st round pick. And the last 2 years, he hasn't been much worse than Hardman. He's scored about 30 less points in each of the last 2 seasons than Hardman. Both of them have played all the games, so it's not due to injury or anything like that. So, you get a lot more value. He's cost about the same, but you don't have to draft him as early. He's somebody you can take a chance with later on in the draft and see what happens. The second name is Jawan Johnson, who's a converted wide receiver, but now playing tight end for New Orleans. And similar to Tyler Conklin in Minnesota, Johnson is the de facto starter in week 1 for the Saints. Adam Troutman and Nick Vannett are probably both out. And so Johnson keeps rising up draft boards. Right now he's being taken in about just a little bit later than Robinson. And he's only got 1 year, $695,000 salary. So, his ownership's gone up. It was up 8% just this week. And so, some of you already missed your chance, but if you haven't drafted yet, you have a chance to get him. And if you have drafted already, you've got a chance. You've got a little over 50% chance that he's available in your league, and he might be somebody you think about going out and get. And the final name is Byron Pringle, also a wide receiver from Kansas City. And we can use the same logic we use for Demarcus Robinson here. The difference between Robinson and Pringle is that Pringle's about $1 million more. He's being drafted a little bit later, probably for that reason. But if you miss out on Robinson, you want a piece of that Kansas City offense, and you don't have any of the big names, maybe take a flyer on Pringle. So that's it. Those are the guys those are guys who you can use to replace players who you may have lost due to the NFL roster turnover madness. Thank you for watching the video. Please like it on YouTube. Smash that like button. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else, thank you very much. Please go to dynastyowner.com and read the article that's associated with this. A lot more information in there than what I've been able to convey here. And thank you for watching. Thank you for being a Dynasty owner, and get ready for the season. If you're watching this on Thursday, if you're watching this on Wednesday, it's only 8 days away. If you're watching it later, it's a week or less until NFL football starts. So hopefully everybody's excited. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the Mac Jones era starting in New England, starting on next Sunday. And that's it. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, and I will see you again soon.